Welcome back to Klepper's Corner, Today in History. Every date on the calendar is basically humanity's group chat of chaos, and April 17th is one of those days where you realize history isn't just a story of progress. It's also a story of people improvising wildly and hoping future textbooks describe it as strategic. From ancient agricultural rituals that feel suspiciously like superstition with a marketing budget, to Cold War miscalculations that make office miscommunication look adorable, today's events show how civilizations repeatedly reinvent the same combination of ambition, fear, ego, and occasional brilliance. April 17th reminds us that humans will organize massive empires, craft revolutionary literature, redraw borders, and occasionally decide that dragging ships over mountains is easier than admitting defeat. Segment 1, and Empires, Foxes on Fire, and the Politics of Panic. Ancient Rome loved a good agricultural festival, the way modern governments love announcing Infrastructure Week for the 10th time. The Cerealia honored Ceres, goddess of grain, because when your entire economy depends on crops not mysteriously dying, you try every possible insurance policy, including supernatural ones. Romans released live foxes with torches tied to their tails into the Circus Maximus, a ritual that sounds less like farming and more like an early attempt at performance art sponsored by anxiety. Religion in Rome often functioned as emotional crop insurance, reassuring citizens that at least someone was in charge of the weather. Meanwhile, in 69 AD, Rome also demonstrated that political stability was optional. When Emperor Otho lost a brutal civil war battle and chose suicide rather than prolonged bloodshed, a surprisingly self-aware decision in a political environment that usually favored denial followed by more denial. His successor, the Tellius, celebrated victory by hosting enormous feasts, while the empire destabilized, proving that the phrase bread and circuses occasionally involved more bread than the treasury could afford. Segment 2, and Kings, Conquests, and Ships that definitely should not be on land. In 1080, Danish king Harald III died after ruling with unusual restraint for a medieval monarch, focusing on legal order rather than Viking expansion. His nickname, Hen, meaning whetstone, suggests historians either saw him as sharpening the kingdom or being slowly worn down by ambitious nobles, which feels relatable to anyone who has ever chaired a committee meeting. Meanwhile, in 1453, the Ottoman Empire faced a defensive chain blocking access to Constantinople's harbor, and responded with one of the most audacious engineering solutions in military history, simply hauling 70 warships over land. Thousands of soldiers dragged ships across greased rollers and dropped them into the Golden Horn behind enemy lines, demonstrating the universal historical principle that if Plan A fails, invent Plan B so dramatic that your opponent questions reality itself. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Byzantine Empire and effectively closed the chapter on the medieval world, proving that history often changes direction, not gradually, but when someone decides geography is more of a suggestion than a rule. Segment 3, and Words that Changed the World and Contracts that Changed it More. In 1397, Geoffrey Chaucer presented the Canterbury Tales in Middle English before the royal court, legitimizing the language of ordinary people as a vehicle for serious literature. Before Chaucer, English had the cultural prestige of a casual group text, compared to the Latin and French used by elites. But suddenly, the stories of knights, millers, and merchants became worthy of artistic attention. Chaucer essentially told the ruling class that common language could carry profound ideas, humor, and social critique, paving the way for centuries of literature that would eventually include everything from Shakespeare to internet comment sections debating grammar with alarming intensity. Less than a century later, in 1492, the capitulations of Santa Fe granted Christopher Columbus enormous authority and financial incentives to seek a western route to Asia. The agreement reflected a mixture of ambition and miscalculation that would reshape global history. The Spanish crown accepted a risky proposal, partly because the potential reward outweighed the perceived cost, demonstrating that exploration sometimes begins with confidence that greatly exceeds accurate math. Segment 4 and Reformation, Ridiculous Wars, and Founders Who Could Not Agree on Mourning Attire. Martin Luther's appearance before the Diet of Worms in 1521 represented a turning point in religious authority, as he challenged the hierarchy of the Catholic Church by prioritizing individual conscience and scriptural interpretation. Luther initially appeared uncertain and requested time to consider his response, reminding us that even history's boldest figures occasionally need a night to rehearse their argument. His refusal to recant helped ignite the Protestant Reformation, permanently fracturing Western Christianity and reshaping European politics. Meanwhile, in 1651, the Dutch Republic declared war on the Isles of Scilly, only to forget to formally conclude the conflict for 335 years, creating a technically ongoing war without battles, casualties, or even participants who remembered it existed. It remains perhaps the most polite war in history. In 1790, Benjamin Franklin's death triggered public mourning and political disagreement over how much symbolic grief was appropriate, establishing the enduring American tradition of debating optics even during solemn moments. Segment 5 and Civil War Decisions and Cold War Disasters. Virginia's vote to secede from the Union on April 17, 1861, transformed the American Civil War into a far more formidable conflict by providing the Confederacy with industrial capacity, population, and strategic geography. The decision fractured the state itself, leading to the formation of West Virginia, demonstrating that political disagreement occasionally results in entirely new maps. 100 years later, the Bay of Pigs invasion illustrated the dangers of strategic planning built on optimistic assumptions. The CIA-trained exile force expected widespread rebellion against Fidel Castro, but encountered unified resistance instead, resulting in a swift defeat that strengthened Cuba's alliance with the Soviet Union. The episode highlights how intelligence failures often occur not because of lack of information, but because decision makers become overly confident in predictions that align with their preferences. Segment 6 and Mustangs, Moonshots, Revolutions, and Constitutions. In 1964, the Ford Mustang debuted at the New York World's Fair, creating the pony car category and capturing the imagination of a generation eager for style, affordability, and speed. The launch demonstrated how consumer identity can become intertwined with technological design, as automobiles evolved into cultural symbols rather than mere transportation. In 1970, Apollo 13 safely returned to Earth after an onboard explosion crippled the spacecraft, showcasing NASA's ability to improvise solutions under extreme pressure. Engineers on the ground developed life-saving adaptations in real time, transforming a potential tragedy into a testament to collaborative problem-solving. In 1975, the fall of Phnom Penh to the Khmer Rouge initiated one of the most devastating genocides of the 20th century, revealing the catastrophic consequences of radical ideological experiments imposed through violence. Finally, in 1982, Canada patriated its constitution, gaining full legal sovereignty while maintaining symbolic ties to the monarchy, illustrating that political evolution often balances continuity with independence. In conclusion, April 17th demonstrates that history rarely moves in straight lines. Progress often emerges alongside misjudgment, innovation beside superstition, and courage mixed with hesitation. Whether through religious ritual, political upheaval, technological ingenuity, or cultural transformation, each generation believes it is navigating unprecedented challenges. Yet the patterns remain familiar. Humans continue to pursue security, recognition, prosperity, and meaning, sometimes with brilliant foresight and sometimes with flaming foxes, misplaced confidence, or ships traveling uphill.